You're not playing at running a business now. This isn't a A-level business studies project. If you don't trust at least a percentage of these people to make decisions, you're just going to burn out, and you're going to burn out really fast. The visionary business owner drives the success, but ops underpins everything and prevents the wheels from falling off. If the model of the business only works when you're in it, the business is only sellable if you're staying. If that process doesn't make yours or your team's life easier, you won't stick to it. When you're first starting and you're doing it for the first time, the best way to do it is...
Hi, Liam. Welcome to the show today. Let's start, I guess, by getting a little bit of context to what we're going to be talking about today. So, yeah, provide me some background.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. I think I worked for most of my career was in media marketing agencies. Started out in the well-trodden route, client services roles. Worked in strategy roles for a bit. And as it progressed, I moved more. The role became more and more operational. You become more of a problem solver and less sort of on that front line. So
Yeah.
my role started to become very, very sort of delivery and operational focused, which I really liked. The agency sector at the moment, as it is very volatile, and I went through a little stream of redundancies post COVID, sort of 2 or 3 redundancies, fairly quick succession. So it led me to setting up on my own. What the concept is that there is a gap in the market for smaller businesses, not just not just in the agency world, but any kind of service-led business where
Yeah.
they get to a certain size and they need operational support. They need help getting the basics done to a really, really high standard. Um, and that's where this sort of new venture came from. It was, it's a very flexible model that enables me to drop into businesses, take a view on what's working and what's not, and help founders put systems and tools and processes in place that hopefully allow them to, focus on growth or win back some time or take a holiday without, stressing every day about what's going on. The aim is that what I want to try and do is make business owners' lives easier by, helping them get a structure in place for the difficult stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, lots of people, when they start a business, they consider things or hear words like processes, structures, things like that. And actually they don't really know what that is because they're very good at their job. And quite often the reason people start a business is because they were good at their job, and therefore thought, you know what, I could do this on my own. But exactly like you said, when you start to grow a small team, and you start to see that not everyone does everything the same as you, and perhaps we do need to write something down because a lot of business owners, and I've been very guilty of it myself. I live in my head. I have all that information, but it is just in my head.
Absolutely, and that's the thing. I'm I've made peace with the fact that operations isn't a sexy thing, and nobody gets into business because they love it. But what I try and talk to when I speak to founders and speak to business owners, it operations is what they need to give them the freedom to be able to do more of the stuff that they want to do.
Hmm.
So they don't have to worry about cash flow. They don't have to worry about, that, like, as you say, that everybody in the team knows how certain things get done. And it means that the business doesn't come to a halt if you're in a meeting or if you're away for a conference or on a holiday. You're not there worried about the fact that nothing gets done without you being there. So yeah, it's absolutely it's the unglamorous side and of building a business, but the difference that it makes between getting it right and doing it wrong is so vast.
Yeah. Do you think that's maybe part of the issue that one, there's well, I guess two issues. One, lack of education on the fact that you probably need these things in place. But two, because it's not the sexy side, like you say, we don't see the same amount of social media posts, or the ones that get the traction, are more about someone's won a big job or their business has allowed them to go on holiday here, without hearing that backstory of how the operations actually are the foundations, I guess, behind that business, allowing that business owner to have that lifestyle.
Yeah, there's something in um, the sort of the new business, the business wins are often driven by sales or by marketing or by or by the business owner themselves, and it's very easy to shout about that and to celebrate that win. I think operations is what keeps your business. It's what
Mm,
retains business. So it's almost like operations prevents failure. So the visionary business owner drives the success, but ops underpins everything and prevents the wheels from falling off. And and that's not something, you can't build a case study around that. You can't shout about that, or at least it's not as engaging as we won this £1 million piece of business to
mm,
we we've increased profitability, or we've become more efficient, or our staff churn has reduced. There's all these things because ops touches everything. Um, there's all of these things, these areas of the business that where operate good quality operations makes a huge difference, but it's not the star striker. It's the Claude Makelele defensive midfield. Uh,
yeah.
it's not Thierry Henry.
No, I love that analogy. I mean, I guess something I suffer with, and maybe I don't bring forward enough in these conversations, is the fact that I've got that curse of knowledge of that. I understand exactly what you mean. I've been in that position where I've grown a business, I've grown a team, and suddenly realize that actually all the wheels don't always stay on because I didn't have these bits in place. But for someone thinking, sorry, I don't get what you mean by this operations. Yeah, give me a sort of maybe a simple real life example, or an area of a business where actually someone implementing a system would make a major difference.
Yeah, I think, and to your point earlier about it can almost be off-putting to a founder, because, as you say, it's never the reason why somebody gets into the business. Um, and the worry is that when I come into a business and we talk about processes and we talk about structures and systems, the immediate sort of reluctance is that it's taking control away, or
Mm,
it's putting new controls and measures in, and it's not. And I always start really, really simply. Sometimes it's as straightforward as having a weekly cash flow meeting, knowing where your money is. And I watched the episode with Ellis recently, where
yeah.
you were talking about cash being king, and it's operations links really closely to that, because it's about knowing when your invoices are going to get paid, when you need to pay people, what money you've got coming in, what money you've got going out. Have it for To have that as a regular recurring meeting or a report once a week can take away hours of stress and worry about where everything is. So just
Mm,
getting into that regular cadence. The same with the next another really simple way of doing it, like people processes, how you onboard a member of staff, how you offboard a member of staff, how do we make that person, that new hire coming into the business, from the first touch point that they have, that every person gets the same consistent level of visibility within the business. Their day one is really well structured for them. It's all an operational process. It might not feel like one, but having that consistency, so that experience for the new starter is really top notch, is a massive um it's a massive driver of whether that person's still going to be there in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. You'll
mm,
you'll know how many times you've ran an exit interview with somebody, and they will take it back to their onboarding. If they've had a poor experience, they will literally say from day one, my laptop wasn't set up. I didn't get my
Yeah.
laptop wasn't there for 3 days. I came in on my first day and my line manager wasn't there. So I was
Yeah.
sat around doing nothing for 4 hours. It's getting a really sort of a light touch process where it's like, so this is what has to happen. And it just starts to, every little bit you do makes a business owner's life a little bit easier. And it feels hard at the beginning, but the more that you do it, and the more that it becomes second nature, and these things iterate, and we find shortcuts and we move things around, and this was really laborious, so let's not do it that way next time.
Yeah.
You just it buys you headspace, just getting everything into a really nice rhythm, and then you move from people to projects. You start moving things out of different silos and getting the teams understanding how they all work together. Um, it's all operations, and I like to compare it to, it's not a really tight formulaic structure. It's like the bumpers that you have on a bowling alley.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
you can still throw a really duff ball, but we'll put this in place to give you a far better chance of it succeeding, and for you to actually, doing something good.
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to, I guess that team onboarding, I've heard of stories. Luckily, I've never had this, but where people have turned up on their first day and sort of no one really knew what they were meant to be doing or whatever. And it's like, what did you do on your first day? Well, I pretty much sat about because no one was ready for me and I didn't have a desk. And you just think, hang on, you're actually paying that person there. And, when you employ someone until they get up to speed, certainly in that agency background where they're delivering client work, they're a cost. And you think, so one, you want to sort it out from that. And secondly, like you say, being able to have a team member who's engaged from the start, because when people leave it's much harder, and expensive to keep hiring, keep retraining. In fact, you're benefiting you're benefiting your team member and your business, but equally the clients that you serve, because they're going to get a consistent service, and we all know keeping clients is much better than having to win new ones.
Absolutely, yeah, 100%. And a failure to retain staff, a failure to retain clients is more often than not an operations failure. It's very rarely a you don't lose a client because one campaign goes wrong. You
No.
lose a campaign because every campaign goes wrong, because your team aren't listening properly,
Yeah.
or status meetings start to slide, and we don't, weekly status reports don't get sent out at the right time. So the client just starts to feel like they're not as valued as they were that first 3 months honeymoon period where everything's great. The founder turns up to every meeting, and so does the
Yeah.
strategy director and the client services director. And then 6 months, 12 months later, that they're working with a much more junior team, and there's just those little controls start to slip, and it's it's an ops failure, because that SLA that was agreed with the client isn't being managed properly.
And I guess that's by having that process in place so that actually you don't have to remember all of these things. You can look down your list. Oh, I meant to have that quarterly check in. Well, okay, let's book it in the diary, and so on and so on. Because business owners, like I said, and I've been guilty of it, often start a business and live in their head. And like it's all up there. And we're only human. We do forget things. It's not that we, don't care about the client. And it's just we're busy on other stuff.
Absolutely, as you should be. It's all about the as a business owner, the objective is growth, or it's whatever the as you say, whatever that next thing is, whether it's the next business win, or whether it's opening a new office, or whether it's growing headcount. There's always that next thing. So you need to be able to trust that team that they're going to service that business in the way that you expect and the way that you want it to happen, and in the way that you've told the client that it's going to happen as well. So if they're, if
Mm.
they've been told that they're going to have a Monday morning status meeting and a weekly report sent out on a Friday, and they've been told that these are the members of staff that are going to be there, or this is the members of the team that are going to be the roles and responsibilities of each person, then that's what we need to do. And obviously things change over time, but then it needs to be a mutual conversation, so that they're not going through their fourth account executive in 6 months
Yeah.
because people are leaving and we're not onboarding people properly. And it all comes back to building that regular cadence with your people, with your clients, with how you deliver work, and it just finding that rhythm is what helps you keep that business.
Yeah, we do often see, I mean, certainly you've worked in agencies, and that agency model of actually one of the senior team has been in that sales meeting, they've motivated, they've shown some case studies, the client's excited, that almost the world is promised. And then, yeah, then they're working with a junior person a couple of months later, and actually what's being delivered isn't quite what you were talking about in that initial meeting. And it's just joining it up, because actually I sometimes think when you promise lots and then don't deliver, that's almost worse than just saying, look, this is the standard, you're going to be working with this, and it people know what they're expecting.
Yeah, and have that team in the pitch. I mean,
Yeah.
I've talked about this. That this has been talked about for 20 plus years, like my entire life in agencies, from being an account exec myself, not being involved in a pitch. And then when the business is won, they go, "Oh, by the way, you're working on this account now." And it's like, I know nothing about it. I've not met the client. And you go, "Where's the strategy director at? Where's the new business director? How is that handover working?"
Mm.
And then and it goes from there right the way through. So then you see it as a manager, and then you see it as a director, and it's each time it's like, well, let's make the pitch team the team that's actually going to be the team on the business. So from day one, those relationships are getting built, and there's that solid understanding right from the get go of what the client's trying to achieve, what their strategy is, what their long term goals are, and then I think everybody's more invested in it right
Yeah,
from the start.
completely. And I often feel, there's a bit of a chart, a square, which is related to client results and client relationship. And I think even if you've got high results, if your relationship with the client isn't there, it's much easier for another agency to poach them, or people to just feel like, oh, I yeah, don't want to continue. If you've got a strong relationship, like you say, not every campaign is successful. It's just the nature of it. But if you've got a good relationship, you're like, okay, we tried that, didn't work. Now we're going to try this, so on and so on. And if you've got that strong relationship, it's much easier to have those conversations.
And having that process at the start, I think, and
Mm.
and being really clear about it. So it doesn't have to be a templated report, but they need to know the agency needs to be telling a client, and in any business, whether it's a marketing agency, whether it's recruitment, however it's however whatever type of business it is, but it's like, this is what we are doing for you at the moment.
Mm.
It is that show you're working, and
Yeah.
don't leave anything to chance. Explain what you're doing. Explain how long it's going to take, and explain the potential risks and the challenges that we're facing on our way to doing it. Be as transparent as you can be with that client while you work with them, and it strengthens that relationship no end.
Yeah, I've always been a big believer in, almost constant communication, and not just for communication's sake, but, the example I often give to people, we run lots of websites and things like that. If a support ticket comes in, rather than going, oh, I know what that is, it only take me half hour to fix, and someone starts fixing it, well, 20 minutes later, that client's getting really worked up because they've submitted a support ticket and haven't heard anything. And, it's like, it's not that you can fix it in half hour. Actually, I'd much prefer, even if it takes an hour, but say to the client, thanks, got that. I'm going to look into it now. Think I might know what it is. And just keep that communication. And if after an hour you haven't been able to fix it, follow up and say, I'm still working on this. We haven't forgotten about you, because everyone wants to feel like they're in safe hands as such, and they're being looked after. And those tiny little bits of communication, that little bit of micro interaction, means way more than at the end a 32-page report, which I'm not saying that isn't important, but those little bits are actually what makes the relationship.
100% agree. It's so important just to that almost over communicating.
Yeah.
It's tell them what you're going to do and tell them again, and then leave them in no doubt that you have heard what they've said and that it's being acted upon.
Yeah.
I think it's huge. And as you say, that all of that, how to deal with that client and um how to understand their challenges and how to communicate with them, that all lives in your head as a business owner. You know exactly how you want to deal with that, and you know how you want your team to deal with that. And I think the job of operations is to get it out of your head and get it
Yeah.
down somewhere else so that other people know it, what would Matt do?
Yeah.
How would Matt answer this question?
And I guess that's the difference between, lots of people say they own a business and they're a business owner and things like that. But actually, if it's all in your head and the business can't operate without you, then actually you've just got a job. you know, you should be able to step away from your business and it still operates. Or if you want to step away from your business, it still operates. That gets you into a position that you could sell it. And I'm not saying you have to build a business to sell. Lots of people don't want to build a business to sell. But if it could run without you, it provides you with options.
Yes, 100%. That, and I've had conversations with business owners about exactly that recently. If the model of the business only works when you're in it, the business is only sellable if you're staying.
Yeah.
And which kind of defeats the object. So you can build your business up to 15, 20 people, but then if you want to sell it, you become an employee of this bigger business
Yeah.
because so that
And that
you
rarely works. I know a few people who have sold their
exactly.
businesses but stayed in the job, and it's a quite a hard mental shift. And it's not so much that the people buying the business had bad intentions, it's just they had different ideas. And
Yeah,
suddenly you had to get used to, oh, hang on, this isn't my business anymore.
yeah,
And it just doesn't quite sit right.
all of a sudden what you've built and what you shaped in the way that exactly you want to do isn't yours anymore, and it can go in a different direction, and you don't necessarily you don't have the same say and the same
Mm.
power and control in that business as you did once. So if and I completely take your point on board. Not everybody builds a business with the view of selling it, but if you've got even the slightest ambition that might be what you want to do at some point down the line, you need to be planning for how how does this business operate with somebody else doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. There's even, I guess, that thing of, even if you're not planning on selling it, okay, what would happen if you suffered a period of ill health or a close family member had some ill health and you wanted to be able to take 4 months, 6 months off to be able to be with that family member, and you might check in a bit with the business, but could you do that? And at the end of the 6 months, come back to a business that's still running. And,
Yeah,
and if you couldn't, you're leaving yourself stuck.
exactly. As you say, you're essentially you're a freelancer with some contractors around you. That's what you've built.
Yeah.
You haven't built a business that you own. You've built something that you're running yourself and
Yeah.
involved in every conversation. I think when I first started working moving from kind of project and delivery roles into operational roles, one of the first questions that I came up against was, uh, how do I get the business owner or the founders away from the day-to-day running of the business? Not entirely, but enough for them to trust the team around them, and also be confident that they didn't have to be in every client conversation. They didn't have to be in every new hire conversation. So a lot of that was building SOPs, building decision-making hierarchies of who gets sign off on what at what level, so that they knew if somebody in a creative team needed a new piece of software, if it was £500, then the creative director could sign off on that. But if it was
Yeah.
£5,000, then it laddered up to somebody at board level, and just giving them that, helping them build that trust was the biggest. It was the hardest thing because they had been involved in every conversation. So they have to sort of let go a little bit and take the stabilizers off. And it's like, this isn't, you're you're not playing at running a business now. This isn't A-level business studies project. You've built your agency to 50, 60, 70 people. If you don't trust at least a percentage of these people to make decisions, you're just going to burn out, and you're going to burn out really fast. So it's all about building the trust enough for them to let go.
Do you think part of that is that almost mental shift? So, of a business owner, it's not so much, they're probably up for putting these processes in place, but they need to get their head around the fact, exactly like you said, that you need to let go and you need to be able to trust your team because it can lead to burnout.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it has. It's inevitable, I think, burnout. If you're keeping everything in your head and if you're looking at your calendar on a Monday and you're just in meeting after meeting after meeting, to sign things off and to make decisions, and you're the bottleneck. If you're the bottleneck for every decision that gets made in that business, you're just going to cook. Like you are just going to be broken eventually. So, but I think, no, for a lot of business owners, nobody teaches them how to do it. Nobody teaches us how to run a business. I was the person least likely to to set up my own business. And chemistry and industry was a pipe dream for so long because I was like, I just had in my head that I was a company guy. I was just going to work in a big organization, hopefully do quite well, have a reasonably nice life out of it all, and that was going to be me. Um, but nobody teaches you how to do these things. So you learn by doing as you are growing this business. You learn how to manage a P&L. You learn how to uh, make good hiring decisions. So for then to you hand that over to somebody who's not running the business, you're asking them to you're asking to them to some follow go do that same journey as you've been on. And you can't really train them how to do it because you only know it because you've fallen into it to do it.
Yeah.
So you can't train somebody how to manage a P&L because you've only done it by staring at it on a Sunday morning when because you're meeting your accountant on a Monday, and it's like, I need to understand what this is telling me.
Yeah.
So so you can't then get your a client services director to understand the same thing, or because you don't physically have the skill set to train them. And I think therefore that reluctance to hand things over, it is real, and it's a really big thing. It's like, I can't give that to this person because they won't know how to do it because they don't run a business. And
Mm.
I think that's really key. That's where the trust issue comes in.
I mean, talking about setting up your own business there, I mean, how have you found that process? Because I often joke it's very easy to look into other people's businesses and find where the issues are. It can sometimes be harder to do it for yourself. Um, how have you found setting up the business yourself?
So I think I have the opposite problem to most business owners because at heart, I'm an operations person.
Yeah.
So what I struggle with is the big picture thing, is the visionary. I'm going to win 10 clients this year, and I'm going to win 20 clients next year. That's the part of it that I struggle with. Whereas I speak to a lot of founders, and that's their only focus. Like that's their
Mm.
only that's where the whereas I will spend too long in the muck and boots of it all. I will. I could tell you exactly how much money that I've got in my accounts at the moment. I can tell you what's coming in this month. I can tell you what's going out this month. I can, where I'm working with contractors and working with freelancers, I can tell you how many hours I'm working with people, how many, I'm too much in the detail and not enough in the big picture stuff, I think.
Mm.
So that's where I've found it. I found it fascinating. I've learned more in the last 12 months of doing this than I did in the last 15 years of being in quite senior roles in a range of different businesses, just because you're closer to it. You're involved in everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's really interesting you say, and I speak to lots of different business owners, and I almost say there's no one perfect business owner. There's lots of people who are great at the creative side and doing that and winning business. Other people need to get into the detail, and I've quite often seen people who have started the business step down as a managing director and put someone else in as the role, and they've realized actually my role is making the YouTube videos because that's the bit I really enjoy and I'm
Yes.
good at. I'm not the best at this. And I think actually understanding that you're not the best in every area is quite a key part of growth as a business owner. Because I think very much we're thought, I'm a business owner, I know how to do it all. And you soon realize actually, you're going to be really good at some bits, but there's some other bits you're not the expert in. And
Yeah.
get someone who is better at it than you as quickly as possible.
Yeah. And I think we see at the moment, kind of anecdotally, in fractional spheres, especially that
Mm,
like fractional work in the States is 2, 3, 4 years ahead of where we are in the UK at the moment in terms of the amount of opportunities that are out there. But it's still the two roles that are the biggest for fractional are marketing roles and finance roles.
mm,
And I think that's because if you're a business owner, you look at those two roles as one, bringing in new money, essentially from a marketing point of view, and keeping control of your money from a finance point of view. Two things uh, that a founder or a business owner wants to focus on, um, but maybe doesn't want to stretch to a 120K a year CMO or a CFO at the stage their business is. It can be done 1-2 days a week, so they bring in somebody to come in and do those roles. Ops is a little bit further down the hierarchy, the pecking order, if you like. It's not seen as vital. It's not seen as necessary at an early stage. I think that's because, as we just said, a lot of it the business owner does themselves. So
yeah.
they've built out those processes and how things work, and so they know it. And also, it's harder to attribute a financial impact to an operations role that compared to what you can do with finance or marketing or
Yeah.
sales.
Yeah, sometimes it's always hard to link it back. I mean, I know there's lots of discussions at the moment about brand, and I'm quite into personal branding and things like that. And it's sort of one of those ones of it works, but but trying to tie it together with certain things it can always be tricky. And I think from an agency background, it's that balancing between something that you believe in and equally something that is going to give a great KPI that you can deliver in a report because there's sometimes a bit of a balance there.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And that's the tricky part is at the moment. I sort of work with. I have a marketing consultant that helps me with my website and with my with LinkedIn and everything, and she constantly asks me the question, is like, can you give me a case study? It's like, I can, I can get a case study, but I mean, it's not a glamorous one. It's, it comes back to that, what we said at the beginning. It's not a sex case study. I can get, if I've reduced a client's debtor days from 60 to 30, or, we've got our, overdue invoices down to a manageable place, so reduced staff churn. It's all great and it all delivers
Mm.
a financial impact, but it's not the same, as it doesn't grab people's attention in the same way as sort of as saying we won £2 million worth of new business, or anything like that. So we're fighting, in a different arena, I think, to try and, um, if we're trying to get business owners' attention and talking to them about the difference that a solidifying your operations at a very early stage, um, I need to find a way to make that more appealing to business owners, I think.
Yeah. Just to finish off today, because I've loved your insights. If there is a business owner listening and they're sort of thinking, okay, yeah, I've it's all in my head. I run my business. Where does someone start? Then, are there any tools available that people can use to create some processes, or what do they need to consider? Is it just jotting down every time they're doing little things?
It's that, I mean, that is a great start, because at least you've got something. So th I tend to use something like Notion or Coda to start breaking out, to write SOPs, and
Yeah.
to almost create like a little document library. One of the things we've done with chemistry and industry is I've built sort of a library of 50, 60 SOPs that for clients to use. They're not necessarily, they won't be perfect. They would take a little bit of tweaking and make adapting them to your specific business needs, but it gives you a really, really good starting point. Um, and whether like go on, that's whether it's sort of onboarding a client, onboarding a new hire, putting decision making hierarchies in. I've got, I can with the documents that we've written up, we can get you 80% of the way there in a day. But it's, without that, yeah, the best thing to do is just to start writing stuff down, how it works at the moment, and then how you want it to work, and then you start making those changes. And the other thing is just looking at that rhythm of, whether it's meetings or like delivery milestones for projects, just start making those points really clear in a timeline, a new business timeline or anything like that. So you're not reinventing the wheel. You're not starting from scratch every time a new project begins or a new person joins the business. Having a starting point will, it'll save hours and hours and hours of time.
Yeah, and I guess it helps with your headspace when actually you've got something to resort back to. I mean, just for anyone who's listening who's hearing SOP and thinks I don't even know what you're talking about, explain an SOP to me.
And so an SOP is a overblown, lofty term. It's a standard operating procedure, which is, uh, basically documenting a process. It is how something should work in an ideal world. And again, coming back to that guardrails thing, we know that I know that there are always going to be factors that mean things have to change. Um, my An SOP, or the standard operating procedure, is how it works when you've got the team in place, you've got the time you need to get everything up and running, and you've got the client's amenable, and they've got everything in place at their side. We all know that the reality of it is that you're trying to hire to get somebody in place at the same time, where you want a month before things go live and the client wants things live in 2 weeks, so that like things always get squeezed. But at least if you have something documented and you have something written down, you can see where you can squeeze things and where, and again, then it becomes a mutual decision. It's like, right, we can do this in 2 weeks, but this part of it, we're going to have to do it at a later date. So like
Yeah.
that gets kicked down the road a little bit. But we can do X, Y, and Z, and we can get your project live in 2 weeks. But A, B, and C will have to wait for the next quarter.
Yeah, I often found that having some of these procedures in place, it would allow someone to do at least 80% of the task, almost just following, I'm doing this and then I've got to do this and I've got to send the client contract and then the invoice or whatever it is. And it just gives you enough headspace, because I certainly find as a business owner, I suffer from that decision fatigue, or some days if I've just sat in lots of meetings all day, by the end of the day, my brain is exhausted. But by taking out a lot of those decisions, because actually I'm just following this process, it allows you to have space to make the bigger, more important decisions.
And if you do start to document it as well, especially something like onboarding a new client, people are amazed at how many things there are to do. Like from a business owner's perspective, from a finance perspective, from account management perspective, from sales handing over to client services. If you document everything, before you know it, you're up to 100 plus action that need to be done. Sometimes that's terrifying. Sometimes people look at it and go, "Oh my God, there's so much that we need to do." But by having it all written down, and again, you can't over communicate. If it's something that needs to be done, stick it in and put a checkbox next to it. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be a expensive CRM system. It can be a Google sheet or an Excel spreadsheet. That's as good a place to start as any. And just work through and tick things off as they get done. And before you know it, like I say, you start to find shortcuts and you start to find workarounds, and then you can move into expensive systems that automate things and do it for you. But when you're first starting and you're doing it for the first time, the best way to do it is down in a spreadsheet.
Yeah, I've been guilty of overcomplicating things before, thinking, oh, you know what, I'm going to do this and we get this massive system. But in fact, the first stage is often just getting the details down out of your head. And then you can work out, what system do I actually need? Do I need that CRM? Do I need this bit of software? But at first, just get it out of your head before investing in something and giving yourself another headache to deal with.
If that process doesn't make yours or your team's life easier, you won't stick to it.
No.
People will just subvert it and they'll go, I'm not doing that. So the amount of times I've seen, like say, a client put in Salesforce or HubSpot or introduce Asana or Monday without introducing it to the team properly, and just go, oh, we're using this now. And 6 months down the line, you go, well, there's not much in this system. And they go, oh, I'll still use my notebook, or I still use my Excel spreadsheet. And it's like, all right. And it's because it's not been introduced properly. It's not been onboarded properly. And people haven't seen a benefit of using it. So they've not adopted it in the way that you want.
Defaulted back to other things. Liam, thank you so much for your insights today. I've really enjoyed chatting to you. I certainly feel like, at times we were getting a little bit off our chest and just, explaining that actually, these things are important. And one of my aims with the podcast is to make people's lives easier. And quite often, actually, like you say, and having an SOP on just things that are done regularly can really make your business life so much easier.
Absolutely. Yeah, big time.
Yeah. Liam, thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much, Matt. It's been great.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Balanced Ambition podcast. I genuinely hope the stories inspire you as much as they inspire me. If you found value in today's conversation, please share it with a friend. And remember, by subscribing, you won't miss an episode, and it would truly mean the world to me. Stay balanced, and I'll see you next time.